Hello, we've had two future kings talking about the future this week, not about their own futures, of course, but the futures of us all and the health of the planet. And we've had the Queen with a walking stick for the first time, the 95-year-old monarch using one. Plenty of people younger than her have used them before, but perhaps it's a reminder, isn't it, Lizzie, of the age of the Queen, of her advancing years.
Yeah, as you say, I mean, she's 95, she'll be 96 next April. I think it's pretty remarkable that we've seen her up until this point without one, apart from once before, but we can talk you through that.
We can indeed. So welcome to the Royal Rota podcast, your weekly royal bout of news and views from ITV News. You know, that rhymed. That was good, wasn't it? News and views. I made that up on the spot.
I'm frankly relieved you're not playing the piano this week.
I think people no longer want to hear my very incompetent piano abilities. So we are with you on YouTube. We are with you on your podcast platform. You can get us every week on around about Friday. We do our best to record this thing on a Friday. It is the Royal Rota from ITV. And what we do every week, as regular viewers and listeners will know, is Lizzie will give you a rundown of the Royal Week. And that happens about now.
Royal Week that was. So at the top of the list, the Queen attended a service this week at Westminster Abbey with her daughter, the Princess Royal, for the Royal British Legion centenary. And as you say, she was using a walking stick for the first time at a major public event. She also this week was inducted to the Hall of Fame for British flat racing. We know that's a huge passion for the Queen. Prince Charles delivered an important speech on the environment in China. The Met Police have decided to take no further action over sexual assault claims against the Duke of York. Prince William has also spoken out about the environment this week ahead of his Earthshot Prize ceremony on Sunday, and he has criticised space tourism. Kate and William paid a visit to Kew Gardens for something called Generation Earthshot, which is all about inspiring the younger generation to come up with ideas on how we could repair the planet. The Queen has been in Wales today with Charles and Camilla opening the Parliament, and there was an announcement this week about which royals will be attending COP26 in Glasgow next month.
I wish I'd timed that because it actually felt quite a long list. And actually I was scribbling it down as you spoke. It's actually next to the list that I wrote of last week's podcast, which has got Tree, Baton, Canada, Countess of Wessex. I can't read my own writing, but this week's list now goes Abbey, Hall of Fame, China, Andrew, William, Earthshot, Space, Q, Wales. This is basically, this is Lizzie's Robinson's Royal Rundown in 5 seconds. Abbey, Hall of Fame, China, Andrew, William, Earthshot, Space, Q, Wales.
Ends.
Yeah,
goodbye.
I can. Basically, should we just stop the recording there? And that's your podcast for this week. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Now, I'm looking at my list and wondering where to start. There was a lot of interest in Prince Andrew this week, the fact that the Metropolitan Police weren't going to follow up on that. There's been a kind of an hour of broadcast tapage of two future kings with an organisation called the BBC. I'm going to start talking about the Queen, I think, just because she's the head of the family and she's 95 years old and she's been out and about this week, as she often gets out and about. She's been in Wales, she's been in London, she's been with her son, Prince Charles, she's been with her daughter-in-law, Camilla, and her daughter, Princess Anne, and using a walking stick. So should we show you the pictures? This is the Queen exiting the car at the front of Westminster Abbey. You can see, of course, I'm talking like you're watching this on YouTube, but if you're not, you'll just have to go to our Instagram page and go and look at it on there. But the Princess Royal was behind the Queen. And as she got out of the car, which she managed to do without a stick, but she handed her this walking stick. And I suppose you were there, weren't you, Lizzie? And it was kind of like, the obvious question, why now? What's happened? What's it for? She's had one before because she's had a knee operation, but the answer came back from palace sources. She's using one now for, quotes, comfort.
for her comfort. And we also noticed not only did she have the walking stick, but there were some adjustments made to the route that she took into Westminster Abbey. So her traditional route is through the Great West Door, which is the sort of the main traditional entrance. She didn't go in by that entrance. She went in by one called Poet's Yard entrance, which is a slightly shorter route to her seat. Again, we understand that that was done for her comfort. And as you say, she had the walking stick throughout the engagement. So not just for the arrival, but when she was moving about.
Yes, and we're showing you some pictures, I'm sure, on YouTube right now as we talk about them. But as I say, we did put quite a few of them up on our Instagram page, ITV News Royals, if you want to go and have a look at them and you're not watching this and you're listening to it instead. Now, as you say, I mean, it's a kind of fact of life. I mean, people much younger than 95 have had walking sticks. The fact that the Queen's got one, it's kind of a very visual acknowledgement that the sovereign, the monarch, is 95 years old and she is becoming less and less physically able to do certain things.
Yeah, but it's not the first time that we've seen adjustments made for the Queen. For example, in 2016, she used a lift rather than stairs to enter Parliament for the state opening. And she's not worn the heavy imperial state crown since 2016. It's now on a cushion. So there are slight adjustments that we've noticed over the years. But
and of course,
I have to say, the Queen has been, for somebody that is 95, in remarkable health. And, you know, as we've seen her, as we've all sort of returned out of lockdowns and she's returned to a public-facing role, her diary has been absolutely packed. I mean, she's been on a world stage down at the G7 summit in Cornwall. She hosted President Biden for tea at Windsor Castle. She's been up to Scotland for Holyrood Week. She was at Buckingham Palace the other day for the baton relay for the Commonwealth Games. I mean, it's remarkable for someone of her age what she's doing.
You're right, but you know, even the baton relay, which is just a few days ago, it's actually on my list for last week's podcast. I do have more than one piece of paper in my life, but this one seems to have returned over the last 7 days. Yeah, even at the baton relay, she didn't have it, and that was going up some steps to the dais, wasn't it? What do you call them? The stage. There's a posh word for a stage.
A riser?
No, it's a dais or dais or dais.
D-A-I-S.
Yeah, and we never know how you pronounce it. Certain people use different words. Stage. It's a bit like equerry, isn't it? We always get stuck on equerry or equerry.
Is it equerry or equerry?
Yeah. We never know these things. We just talk about them on this podcast ad infinitum, but never actually come to a conclusion. But yeah, she didn't have it there. So I kind of, yeah, it's kind of like, okay, when are we going to start doing this in public? And clearly they had these conversations and no one's going to make a big announcement about it. And they were clearly expecting some questions though, weren't they? But why has the Queen got a walking stick? And it was just, the answer, as you say, was for her comfort.
For her comfort. Yeah, but as we mentioned earlier, it is the first time at a major public event we've seen her with one this week, but she was photographed with one in 2003, 2004, but that was following some surgery that she'd had on her knee, wasn't it?
And this looked like more of a crutch, didn't it, rather than a walking stick from the pictures that we are probably showing you now and that we have seen before. But then again, and also, so that then they had the second event this week, which was the Queen going to the Senedd in Cardiff, which is the home of the Welsh Assembly, for those of you who don't know their Welsh politics. And she was opening the Welsh Assembly, or the Welsh Parliament. Assembly or Parliament now? I forget which. I'm going to look it up while we talk. But she was in Cardiff for the opening of that assembly. And use it again. So I kind of think we're in a sort of pattern now where she is going to use it more and more.
Yeah, I don't think it should be a surprise going forward if we see her using it when she's out and about in engagements. However, she held an audience this week and we didn't see her with it then. So I think it will be used as and when it's appropriate, depending on, you know, how much she's got to move about.
Yeah, and she did make a speech to the Assembly members as well, didn't she? So this is what she said to them.
I have spoken before about how recent times have, in many ways, brought us closer together. We all owe a debt of gratitude to those who have risen so magnificently to the challenges of the last 18 months, from key workers to volunteers who have done so much to serve their communities. They are shining examples of the spirit for which the Welsh people are so renowned, a spirit which I have personally encountered so many times.
And just to confirm, it is the Welsh Parliament, the Senedd. It used to be called the Assembly, but it was upgraded to a Parliament some time ago, I think. So there we are.
I think I said Parliament in the rundown, and then you were making me doubt myself, but I'm glad it is.
So it used to be called, as someone who used to do politics before I did this job, you'd think I'd know this stuff. But yeah, the Welsh Assembly, the Senedd in Cardiff Bay, was given more powers fairly recently, and it was upgraded to a Parliament, which is the same status as the Scottish Parliament in Edinburgh. If you want to know about how the UK is governed, and I'm sure there's another podcast that you can listen to find out. So the UK is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Great Britain is made up of England, Scotland, and Wales, and they are all governed differently, apart from on matters of defence and foreign affairs. How's that?
Pretty good.
All right, okay. Should we talk about horses?
Let's talk about horses. My favourite.
Yes. I think, I tell you what, let's start with, rather than hear it at the end, let's start with hearing from John Warren, shall we?
It's wonderful for the sport of racing that the Queen takes so much interest and tremendous pleasure she derives, that she has done. I think horse racing and breeding gives her an incredible release from many of her commitments that she has.
So, Teresa, explain to everyone who John Warren is.
You're looking at me, hoping that I'll explain.
Well, he's the Queen's, how do they refer to it? It's not a horse racing advisor, bloodstock advisor is the word they use, isn't it?
And racing manager.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the man who's worked with the Queen for a very long time on the issues of racing, and crucially, the man who celebrated with the Queen at Ascot in those famous pictures where they were jumping up and down.
Lovely pictures. We know horse racing for the Queen is a passion, but she's also been praised in the past for her incredible encyclopedic knowledge of the sport, and she has bred and owned the winner of every British Classic apart from the Derby, so she has a really, really good history. I think her first winner was in 1949, and since then she's had more than 1,800 winners. Now,
it goes without saying that the Queen has had a massive contribution to the sport of horse racing, not just, the fact that she's the monarch and she likes horses, is the fact that actually she's very interested in it, and with people like John Warren has had, remarkable success in breeding winners.
Yep. I mean, 1,800 winners is a pretty impressive figure, including Estimate, who won the Gold Cup at Ascot. That's probably up there with her greatest wins.
And of course, being in the sort of Hall of Fame, which I understand you can be in the Hall of Fame if you are a horse, but also if you are a human. And the Queen getting in there, I imagine that's one of her top accolades, isn't it? She'll probably have that high on the mantelpiece. Whatever you get for being in the Hall of Fame, horse racing's Hall of Fame, I think that will take pride of place on one of her many mantelpieces or shelves.
Yeah, she was chosen by an independent panel of industry experts for her outstanding contribution to the sport. Yeah. But she has previously said, and I really like this quote, she said that her philosophy about racing is simple. I enjoy breeding a horse that is faster than other people's, and to me, that is a gamble from a long way back.
There we go. I enjoy breeding horses that are faster than other people's. Pretty simple, really, isn't it?
Pretty simple. Pretty simple.
We can go from something quite simple to something quite complex. The future of the planet.
The future of the planet. I wondered where you were headed.
There's, well, actually, I could have gone into Prince Andrew at that point, couldn't I, and talk about something that's quite complex, but we'll come to that shortly. Now, there's a sort of ramping up of activity, I think you could call it, in terms of the royal speaking publicly on matters concerning the environment. That's partly because Prince William's got the culmination of his first inaugural, that's the first means inaugural, but he's got his inaugural Earthshot Prize on Sunday, where we will find out which 5 winners in each of his little 5 different categories has won the not so small £1 million prize money to develop their ideas further. But also we're heading towards COP26 when the UK is hosting. In fact, it's in one of the aforementioned UK nations, Scotland, in Glasgow. And the UK is the host of COP26, the UN Climate Change Summit. Leaders, presidents, prime ministers from all over the world will be convening on Glasgow. So we've got Prince Charles ramping up his activity in this area. Now, you'll be thinking, what's new about Prince Charles talking about the environment? The answer, nothing. He's been doing it since 1971, but certainly raising his voice, and not only talking in an interview this week as he has done, but also talking to the Chinese, who, last time I looked, were the world's biggest polluters.
Yeah, what's interesting is that, as you say, Charles has spoken about this for decades, and William, who has sort of picked up the mantle from his grandfather and his father and is continuing it, he said this week, our family's been talking about this for so long, it's an absolute travesty if, Prince George is still having to bring up this issue, and by then it will be too late.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, there's the whole thing about, halving emissions. There's the whole thing about net zero. There's the whole thing about, capping the global temperature rises to 1.5 degrees. And then there's the practicality of getting people on board. What about America? Well, perhaps good for Prince Charles that Joe Biden's in the White House at the moment rather than Donald Trump. What about China, given they're the world's biggest polluter? They still have coal-fired power stations. What about Australia, which one of its biggest exports is basically coal, digging big chunks of coal out of the ground and selling it to China? So, we often say that the royals don't get involved in politics, but they kind of are with this one, aren't they?
I think the soft power.
Yeah, it's the soft power, but actually, we've now got Prince Charles talking to a conference in China, as he did this week, at the invitation of President Xi Jinping. Now, I think you're right to say that perhaps the view taken by the UK government is that the royals might be able to get some leaders over the line that the politicians can't get over the line. And if you have to dispatch Prince Charles to go and do that, well, he'll, I think we'll all agree he's more than happy to do so.
Yeah, I think he's happy to do whatever in terms of getting people to listen on this issue. It's right up there in his top priorities. So as you say,
everyone wants to listen at the moment as well, which is perhaps the key difference to what he found when he started talking about this in the 1970s and how newspapers used to mock him in the 1980s. That actually here we have an important subject that everyone finally wants to talk about, that Prince Charles has been talking about for 50 years.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a humbling realization that everything we need to survive, the food we eat, the water we drink, the oxygen we breathe, depends on the work of other species and the ecosystems they create. Yet, we continue blithely to wipe out species that hold the secrets to so many innovative and sustainable products for the future. We seem intent on testing our unique world to destruction. But, as Chinese culture has long understood, our interrelationship with nature is critical for our own health and that of everything around us. When we protect lands and ocean, we in fact protect ourselves. Nature bounces back, bringing with her all the benefits on which life depends.
So that was Prince Charles talking to the Chinese. Well, obviously there were more than the Chinese there, but at the invitation of the Chinese. And he's also been talking to the BBC this week. Though interestingly, he did it from Birk Hall, which is his house that he has on the Balmoral estate. And he did it from what's known as Prince George Wood, which is a wood named after Prince George.
Clever. Yeah, they had a very wide-ranging.
So simple.
They had a very wide-ranging conversation, didn't they, about all matters climate change. He was asked about his own carbon footprint. He was asked, you live in a palace, how do you manage your own carbon footprint? And Prince Charles spoke about how he uses solar panels where he can, or biomass fuels. He talked about his Aston Martin that we know runs on wine and cheese.
Yeah, there was a lot of pickup on that, but I kind of thought that we know this. I mean, maybe some people don't, but I mean, we've known about this car that runs on wine. I mean, it's a really odd thing, this, because a car that runs on wine seems pretty extravagant, but it's apparently disused wine that would otherwise go in the drains. and his car runs on that. But I mean, yeah, I think that's fine. But I think most people will agree they haven't got the money or resources to convert their cars to run on disused wine.
I know. But I think his wider point is that where he can, he does try to live sustainably.
Yes, but I mean, he's got an electric car for traveling around London. But, you know, I don't recall him being asked about why he jumps on so many helicopters, for example. And, you know, the answer will always come back at you to say, well, he's got a lot of jobs to get to. People want him at this place and that place. Well, you know, maybe the answer to that is you have to say, well, no, I can't be there because if I came there, I'd have to use a helicopter, and I've decided that I'm not going to do that anymore. But I mean, that is an option he could have chosen.
Yeah, he could. I suppose perhaps one of the things from this pandemic is we've done more on Zoom. It's or other virtual forums that are available. Maybe
Teams
or Teams. Yeah. Maybe it will show that things can be done remotely. Yeah. But they've said before there's nothing quite the same as meeting face to face.
Of course, yeah. But I mean, no, it could just be that in the future he might have to say, well, you want me at this engagement in Gloucester in the West Country, and then you want me at this engagement in Norfolk in the East Anglia. Well, I'm sorry, I just can't do it because otherwise I'd have to get a helicopter. And I think the argument before was always, well, I have to get a helicopter because everyone wants me to be in all these places. And I think if we're going to start talking about carbon footprints and really trying to limit temperature rises, then that's one way of doing it.
There was another interesting bit of the interview, I thought, which was when he was asked about campaign groups like Extinction Rebellion and what he thought of them. And he did say that he could understand their frustration. I mean, he's frustrated, but...
This was a bit tricky for him, I thought, because he certainly some of the newspapers, like the Daily Mail, picked up on the fact that he sympathised or empathised with their position when... If you read the Daily Mail, you know that they've got no sympathy for these people who've been gluing themselves to the road surfaces in order to stop traffic. If you're outside the UK, you might not have heard about this story, but there's a group of people going around at the moment gluing themselves to motorways and highways, trying to get attention brought to environmental issues like insulating homes, like climate change, causing all manner of tailbacks. Ambulances and first responders and paramedics who can't get through because of the blockades. So Prince Charles saying that he sympathised with them was one thing, but he did go on to qualify it and say he disagreed with their tactics.
Yeah, he said he could understand the frustration, but perhaps the way they're going about it is not particularly helpful.
No, but do you understand why they go out?
Yes, of course I do. Yes, but it isn't helpful, I don't think, to do it in a way that alienates people. So I totally understand the frustration. The difficulty is how do you direct that frustration in a way that is more constructive rather than destructive. So, I mean, the point is that people should really notice how despairing so many young are.
Helicopters, which are quite polluting. Another thing that's quite polluting are spaceships. Would you agree? I mean,
I wondered where that segue was going.
Well, I mean, it's kind of not really a segue. It's actually fact, isn't it? Helicopters are not a very environmentally friendly way to travel, and nor is blasting yourself off into space.
And Prince William has been talking about...
Here's the relevant bit.
To the space race and this desire for space tourism. He has done a half-an-hour chat for a BBC podcast ahead of his Earthshot Prize ceremony on Sunday, talking again.
He's welcome to come to do this podcast, just in case he's watching. Prince William, you're welcome on this podcast anytime you like.
But he said, the quote, "I think for me particularly, the idea of this space race that's on at the moment, we've seen everyone trying to get space tourism going. It's the idea that we need some of the world's greatest brains and minds fixed on trying to repair this planet, not trying to find the next place to go and live."
Now, there were some aides at Kensington Palace trying to say, hold on a minute, he wasn't criticising William Shatner, as anyone doesn't know, of course you all know, the Star Trek actor. He wasn't criticising Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon. He wasn't criticising Elon Musk. But he kind of was, wasn't he? I mean, if you're talking about space tourism and space travel, and it's not a particularly environmentally friendly way to go about, and he's also saying at the moment we should be focusing all our attention and minds and scientific effort in solving the climate emergency. You know, he didn't mention them by name. Of course he didn't, but it kind of is criticizing what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, he says directly, doesn't he, the word space tourism, space race. I mean, even if he doesn't say who he's talking about, it's, I mean, we're just joining up the dots, surely.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And actually, there are plenty of people. I mean, I stuck this out on Twitter earlier. I mean, the responses, as ever on Twitter, are quite polarized, but they went from, well said, Prince William, that's exactly what we should be doing, to, why don't you shut up and, you know, move out of one of your many, many houses? But nevertheless, I mean, there is a constituency of opinion to say that actual space travel, really, at the moment, is that what we should be doing?
Yeah, I mean, William has taken this cause, and he said that he wants to be able to look his children in the eye and tell them that he did everything he could to help on this issue. And if that involves being a bit controversial, at least he can come around and say, I did everything.
I was going to say the same thing. Actually, you know, why doesn't Kensington Palace like embrace the controversialism of it and say, well, actually, yeah, it's fact. Space is polluting. If we shouldn't be getting as many flights around the world and doing more meetings on Zoom, should we be blasting people off into space? And actually, I think they should probably own that space rather than try and vacate it, and actually say, well, no, this is something that he really, really strongly believes in. And sometimes that involves saying things that are a little bit controversial.
Yeah. He, meanwhile, says he has absolutely no interest in becoming a space tourist, saying he wants to travel to 65,000 feet in a plane, and that was quite high enough for him.
We need some of the world's greatest brains and minds fixed on trying to repair this planet, not trying to find the next place to go and live.
So space wasn't the only thing he was talking about. Of course, he was talking about Earthshot and actually, you know, his children and, you know, George picking litter at school and all the rest of it. But actually, you know, a chat for 30 odd minutes on this podcast, entirely focused on climate change. No questions we should point out about how he's getting on with Prince Harry at the moment or anything more tricky. But I mean, the Earthshot Prize is coming up. The entire focus was on that, and this is space, like his father and like his grandfather before him, that William is going to focus on in ever increasing ways now.
Yeah, he's going to use his platform to do what he can to tackle climate change. His Earthshot Prize is taking the next 10 years to try and do as much as it can to repair and protect the planet for the future generations. And he talked in the podcast about Prince George, how Prince George has been at school litter picking, and how even he's quite frustrated by the fact that he'll go out and pick litter one day and then he'll go back the next day and there'll be litter back there again. So even at his young age, he sort of has an awareness.
George at school recently has been doing litter picking, and I didn't realise, but talking to him the other day, he was already showing that he was getting a bit confused and a bit sort of annoyed by the fact they went out litter picking one day, and then the very next day they did the same route, same time, and pretty much all the same litter they picked up were back again. And I think that for him, he was trying to understand how and where it all came from. He couldn't understand. He was like, well, we cleaned this. Why has it not gone away?
And on Earthshot, so we're going to be at Earthshot on Sunday. They're not calling it a red carpet, it's a green carpet. And I think we said in the podcast last week, you know, none of the big names, as in Shakira and Kate Blanchett, are going to be there. Basically, anyone who has to travel to get there is not going. So they can keep it as sort of carbon neutral as they possibly can. So you have to be within the UK to attend.
For those listening, Shakira and Kate Blanchett are on the Earthshot Prize Council.
I didn't just
in case you're wondering why Chris is just mentioning them.
Dani Alves, who else? Dani Alves, the Brazilian footballer. Cristina Figueres, the sort of UN climate change ambassador. Who else is on that list? David Attenborough, Sir David Attenborough. He'll be there, but then he lives in London. So, you know, to get to Alexandra Palace, or Ali Pali, as we say in London, that's not too difficult or too polluting.
And we know the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge will obviously be there, but we also know like Emma Thompson and Emma Watson are presenting some of the Earthshot prizes. We know that Ed Sheeran, Coldplay, Shawn Mendes, KSI are all performing. So this is a really star-studded event that they're putting on.
Star-studded, but they're trying to keep it as environmentally friendly as possible, and the carpet will be green, not red, we're told.
The carpet will be green, not red. Yes, and Coldplay's set involves 60 cyclists, is it?
Something interesting like that. So we will look forward to seeing that on Sunday. Talking of green carpets, the green carpet at Kew Gardens is grass, and that's where William and Kate were. Oh, my segues are getting terrible, aren't they? That's where they were this week. Actually, again, Earthshot related, but talking about getting to youngsters and getting them interested in and caring about the environment and the climate emergency.
They were there for something called Generation Earthshot, which is an educational initiative. It's basically trying to encourage children to come up with ideas on how to repair the planet. And it's also sort of sparking an enthusiasm for them, for the natural world.
Now, we used to have a podcast, never a podcast passed without some development with Harry and Meghan. There was something this week where they're getting involved in some sort of ethical financing initiative. But actually, what I was referring to here was that we don't really do a podcast now without some Prince Andrew update. And the Prince Andrew update this week is, and actually this got a lot of pickup, is that the Metropolitan Police are not going to take their investigation any further. Now, what do we mean by that? We mean that they started looking again at the whole issue following the lawsuit that Virginia Giuffre brought in August, and therefore claiming that one of these alleged sexual assaults happened in London in 2001. Therefore, was there something that the Metropolitan Police needed to look at in terms of criminality? They've come back and said no.
Yeah, they released a statement saying that they reviewed a document released in August 2021 as part of US civil action. That's Virginia Giuffre. The review has concluded and we are taking no further action. And a source close to the Duke that we spoke to said to us that it came as no surprise that the Met Police have confirmed that having reviewed the sex assault claims against the Duke for a third time, they are taking no further action. Despite pressure from the media and claims of new evidence, the Met have concluded that the claims are not sufficient to warrant any further investigation, and the Duke has always vigorously maintained his innocence and continues to do so.
But here we're talking about sort of criminality. Obviously, the lawsuit is a civil case, but what the Met were basically saying that they didn't find anything that warranted a criminal investigation. Most people will know that the age of consent in the UK is 16, or certainly was 16 in 2001. Virginia Giuffre, when she made these allegations, was 17. But her lawsuit continues. But I had quite a lot of pickup on my social media with this story, Lizzie, and I think a lot of people just saw that as, oh, of course not. He's the Queen's son. Why would the police investigate? Why would they look into him? He's above the law. All those kind of things were coming up again. And we should be clear that Prince Andrew denies the allegations against him and claims that he doesn't even recall meeting Virginia Giuffre. But we're coming back to this issue of reputation and the reputation of the royal family more generally. And yet again, any sort of development of this nature, and you know, he's being tried in the court of public opinion. And from a public opinion point of view, this was not a good week.
Talking of reputation and the royal family, it was quite interesting on the Sunday papers. Two Sunday papers here in the UK had stories that tried to put some distance between the royal family and Prince Andrew. In
other words, they were saying there's no comeback. You know, even if you're cleared of all these allegations, even if the police take this no further, and either the lawsuit goes nowhere, kind of your reputation is now so bad that we don't think there is a way back for you. And this is coming from his own family, allegedly, according to these newspapers.
Yeah, exactly. Sort of the family almost trying to put some distance between them and Prince Andrew. But as you say, the case in America continues. He has until the 29th of October to respond to the papers that he's been served, and then we will have the first pre-trial hearing on November the 3rd.
So, as I say, not a podcast passes without some Prince Andrew update. I wonder what it will be next week. But we will be busy enough in the coming week. We've got the Earthshot Prize we'll be at. We'll bring you all the pictures. You know where to go if you want the pictures. Instagram, ITV News Royals. Twitter, I am at Chris Ship ITV, and you are? At
Lizzie ITV.
Next week, I might even be in the studio, as you can probably tell from the surroundings. I'm still at home for reasons that you've probably guessed are COVID related, but we won't go into those boring details. That's why I'm at home. Lizzie's in the studio. But maybe we'll all be in the same place next week. You never know.
Maybe, hopefully.
Maybe. Thank you for tuning in. I'm just checking we've done your list, haven't we, There's nothing on that list that we haven't done.
I've done everything.
Good. Right. I just checking I wasn't wrapping up early. We will see you next week. Thank you for your continued viewership and listenership, and we will see you in a week's time. Bye-bye.